Hello viewers, welcome to this session on green technologies in environmental management and sustainable agriculture. I introduce myself as Dr. Sushmita Bhaskar from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, and my research specialization involves environmental geomicrobiology. So, this session would focus on the green technology applications specifically in relation to sustainable agriculture practices and also in the biofuel production. If we see from time immemorial and geologically, this is a planet that has life, and volcanic eruptions, earthquakes and other natural hazards or disasters have been happening from before, but this has not affected so much the quality of life or living in terms of pollution as we are facing today, and this is because of the anthropogenic or human induced pollution, which we refer to as environmental pollution. This could be from in the air, in the soil, in the water that we drink, and they are laced with toxic chemicals, toxic pollutants. Even the particulate matter, if you see, we have this 2.5, which is so small that can even enter your bronchioles, get lodged in the lungs, and they show no signs or symptoms until it is it's too late that anything could be done. So, these are some irreversible health effects of the pollutants, and we ourselves are responsible for destroying the planet's pristine condition. When we talk about pollution, so this could be from point or non-point sources, and this could be at the local level, regional and transboundary, because pollutants do not have any political boundaries, and that is why when in one place if any pollution has occurred, for example the Chernobyl disaster, which was a nuclear disaster that occurred in 1986, the neighboring countries, this occurred in Ukraine in the former USSR, and the neighboring countries, the Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Norway and Denmark, they stopped the import of the dairy products, cheese and other food products from this place because of the environmental pollutants and the radionuclides and the hazards that is involved. So, here we see a classic example where the pollutants are not transboundary in nature, so they can travel far apart, and they could be primary or secondary pollutants, and the pollution effects, they also depend on the population, the lifestyle and also the technologies that we use presently. The major sources of the pollutants, this could be from various industries like the textile, the tanning industries, you could have the refineries, you could have the alloy, iron and steel. There are various industries from where the pollutants can enter the environment. Then we have from the commercial places where toxic compounds, bleaching agents, organics, heat, inorganics, all this could be liberated to the ecosystems. Then in the agricultural sector, we have indiscriminate use of pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fertilizers. All these are chemical containing compounds, chemicals that contain arsenic, which can cause irreversible health effects and also damage the ecosystem and the functioning of the flora and the fauna living in those systems. In the domestic sector, we have the sewage, we have the detergents that have high amount of phosphates, the oxygen demanding waste. In oil spills, that is from the tankers, the spillage occurs, the deep sea drilling operations, they can give out a lot of oil into the sea, and of course the natural activities which are just weathering and volcanic activities, they can also give out certain pollutants into the ecosystems. So, environmental biotechnology, this could be used in the protection and restoration of the environmental quality. You can use it for giving clean energy, and they can be also used for the pollution cleanup, wastewater treatment, air purification as well as bioremediation. First, let us focus on the biofuels and green fuels for transport. So, this relies on renewable energy. We have various forms, you have the wind energy, the tidal energy, and many countries, for example Germany has turned on to a totally renewable country where people use just the renewable energy. So, India is also has to achieve, if it has to achieve the sustainable development, then we also need to switch on to the from the fossil fuels to the cleaner energy alternatives. And where can we get these fuels from? even the biofuels or the fuel that could be got from the living organisms, or they provide friendly alternatives to these depleting the non-renewable resources like the fossil fuels. So, this is any form of transport that does not use or rely on the dwindling natural resources. It has a low negative effect on the environment as it makes use of energy sources that are sustainable. Walking, cycling, sailing, of course some examples, but in daily life it may not be possible for us to commute long distances just by walking. So, before we go on to the types of biofuels, what are the problems that are related to unsustainable transport? So, maybe the emissions, the carbon dioxide, which we are more concerned with climate change, and the greenhouse gas emissions, they would rise much more, 905 million tons by 2025, only due to the road transport. Already we are seeing in the metros that the roads are congested, and each family having more than 4 cars, each member having 1 car per person. So, this is not a solution. People need to switch on to the public transport, and again the public transport also should be made it in such a way that it is comfortable and luxurious to travel in, and these are certain concerns that we need to take into account. Again, petroleum consumption, okay, it is too high and we are dwindling the natural resources. Health, crash fatalities and injuries, all this are being just affected due to these things, and there is also a higher spending on the transport by using the forms of transport. If we take a case study of Delhi, which has unsustainable motorization, number of registered motor vehicles in the years 2011 and 12, which is almost 8 to 9 years back, was 7.45 million. Again, the number of cars registered, the two-wheelers, taxis, buses and autos, it is really showing alarming amounts. The number of buses per 1000 population was just 2. The car ownership per 1000 population is very high as compared to other countries, for example Singapore. So, this is a classic case of unsustainable motorization, and we need to shift to sustainable development means. So, we need to implement sustainable transport. Regulatory instruments, for example, the emissions of the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, local pollutants, these have to be monitored. Cleaner fuels, biofuels need to be used. Fiscal instruments, road pricing and fuel tax are really important. Hybrid regulatory tradable entitlements to emit the CO2 from the vehicles. So, we are having even the vehicles that are having the cleaner technology and they emit less of the pollutants these days, but again it depends on how much of the population, like the totally those vehicles that are producing more and more of the pollutants need to be banned or should not be there for sale even on the second hand, or buying from another person or a dealer. This has to totally come to an end, and only then we can march forward and move to our goals of the sustainable development goals. Now, going on to the green technology for biofuels. So, any fuel that is derived from biomass, it could be plant, algae, animal waste. So, here we have heard of bioethanol, and bioethanol is used in many countries, in many of the Norwegian and the Scandinavian, the Swedish countries. So, there they use the ethanol for their buses and they work fine. So, this is nothing but fermenting the plant materials. Biodiesel, which is got from vegetable oils, from animal fats, all this reduces the carbon exhaust by 80%. So, just see the amount of emissions that could be reduced by just switching and turning on to newer and cleaner fuels. It produces 100% less sulfur oxides than petroleum and produces less exhaust smoke up to 75%. So, there are a number of added benefits when we just change the fuel. So, how is ethanol produced? It could be by the fermentation of starch and sugar. In Brazil and US are the leading producers of the ethanol. In the USA, the ethanol biofuel, it's made from corn maize grains and it's blended with gasoline to produce gasohol, and that is a fuel that is 10% ethanol. In Brazil, ethanol biofuel is made from sugarcane and it's used as a 100% ethanol fuel, or in gasoline blends containing 85% ethanol. So, this ethanol is a good technique by just a simple technique of fermentation, and here we can have a good amount of biofuel for running our transport. There are also certain other places from where we can get the biofuels, that is from the soya bean oil or the palm oil, from the waste oil. So, even the restaurant waste, this was a recent study which came up in one of the scientific journals, where waste oil could be recovered from restaurants and they could be recycled and made into a biofuel. Again, cellulosic ethanol is commonly made from sugarcane bagasse. This is also a waste product made from the sugar processing industry. Algae and cyanobacteria can also produce biofuels, methane gas and biocase, and also there are certain type of bacteria which can also produce the biofuels, which have been tested in the laboratories. So, there are a number of alternatives, varieties where we can go on the green biotechnological solutions in order to address the problem of pollution. Recently, Jatropha was also in the news. So, Jatropha biodiesel, these are also cleaner fuels and options for renewable energy. Jatropha cucus, this belongs to the Euphobiaceae family. It grows in warm weather, can grow even in barren soil. So, for farmers also it is a boon. Oil in the seeds can be converted to high quality diesel fuel, and in this they have the energy rich bonds that are found in the fatty acid methyl esters, also referred to as the FAME. This can withstand a drought, it can naturally repel pests, and it can also grow in the subprime soil. So, a host of advantages for this Jatropha, and that could be very well used for the production of biodiesel. Some advantages of the Jatropha biodiesel. So, the hydrocarbon emissions are half that of fossil fuel, leading to a reduced carbon footprint, and the farmers can also turn a devalued or a land which has no value into an economically profitable one. So, here the farmers are also at a profit, at an advantage by producing this biodiesel fuel plants. So, that was an account of biofuels. Now we come on to sustainable agriculture. So, pesticides are commonly sprayed whenever we go to the fields. Right now we are also scared of selecting the palak or the methi, the greens that we get in the market, because you do not know what they are sprayed with, DDT or DDE or the the other kind of the chemical fertilizers that are used to kill the pest, the bugs. Okay, so we need to escape this toxic trap. So, there are some cyanide compounds, the DDT, which enters the waste waters through the agricultural field. And let me tell you, even before the 1960, the word environment was not well known, but Rachel Carson, the biologist writer, so she brought about the challenges, the agricultural challenges of the agricultural practices and the farmers who were using this DDT that was sprayed and that affected the birds. So, after that we had these conferences on the Stockholm conference and the sustainable development conference at Rio de Janeiro, and all this awakened people, and more emphasis was given on in the field of environmental science. So, this DDT is a non-biodegradable compound and it is not soluble in water. It can bioaccumulate. So, human beings are at the end of the food chain. So, we can bioaccumulate that amount and it can cause irreversible damages in our body, and it also biomagnifies. Often we have experienced certain strange physiological effects, like when we go near the plants that are sprayed with chemicals. So, there are a host of health problems that arise due to the spraying of these chemicals, and there could be adverse reproductive outcomes, neurological disorders, cancers have also been associated with the pesticide exposures. So, the populations can be exposed to pesticide through the various pathways, maybe through inhalation, also through absorption through the skin, dermal route, and also by ingestion of the food containing these pesticides. So, one such case study is that of the poisonous nuts or the cashew nuts, which was sprayed with endosulfan in the Kasaragod district of Kerala. And here the Plantation Corporation of Kerala, PCK, so they extensively sprayed the endosulfan pesticide onto these plants, cashew nut plant, and they did aerial spraying with the help of a helicopter. So, you can see the hectares of land that were actually sprayed with this chemical, and this is an organochlorine compound and it does not break down easily, and that means it is persistent in the environment. It remains in the environment for long periods, number of years. And Then the people started observing strange problems, that is the children that were born had teratogenic effects or birth defects, they had congenital deformities, then the congenital anomalies, cerebral palsy, and all these have been reported. So, in this figure you can see the child how it is affected by the use of endosulfan, and then later on they banned this chemical, and also the government had to give the compensation to the people who were affected. But even now certain teratogenic effects are being reported, just as in the case of the Bhopal gas tragedy. So, pesticides can have irreversible effects on our body, and that is why we need to now opt for the biofertilizers and green biotechnology in manufacturing of biofertilizers. So, green biotech for biopesticides. Pesticides derive from the natural materials like animals, plants, bacteria, and certain minerals. We have the microbial pesticides, which consists of bacteria, entomopathogenic fungi or viruses. There are bio-derived chemicals, that is pyrethrum, rotenone, neem oil, and various essential oils. So, they often say that if we have one row of tomatoes that are being planted, and then we have 2 rows of this marigold or the chrysanthemum variety, then the tomatoes are unaffected by the pest. So, that means this plant has some natural pyrethrum derivative which is preventing the pest nearing these tomato plant. So, like this there are bio-derived chemicals which are present in the plants, which could be processed for using them into the biopesticides. The same way, plant incorporated protectants, that is genetically modified crops, they have genetic material from other species incorporated into their genetic material. RNAi pesticides are also some novel techniques which have been used in order to tackle the problem of pesticides. Next, coming on to fertilizers and human health. So, in the same way as pesticides cause irreversible effects, fertilizers also cause a number of damage to our body and also to the ecosystem, to the living organisms. So, this is it could be natural or synthetic in origin. So, now we are dealing with the problem of the chemical or the synthetic fertilizers. They are applied, so why is a fertilizer normally applied to a soil? So, they are normally applied in order to enhance the plant growth and also for enriching a plant with their nutrients. So, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all this are got from ammonium sulfate, ammonium phosphate, urea, ammonium nitrate, ammonium chloride. So, these are some combinations that are used for the fertilizers for improving the crop and productivity. One common problem of the fertilizer in the ecosystems which we see is eutrophication. So, eutrophication is normally caused due to the natural aging of the lakes and enrichment of nitrates and phosphates. This leads to algal blooms, and the algal bloom can actually deplete the oxygen content in the waters, and they can also produce certain toxins which are toxic to the fishes, the aquatic organisms and aquatic plants that are living in that system. Now, the excessive application of phosphate containing fertilizers can also lead to this eutrophication problem, and it can deplete and totally destroy a marine or a freshwater ecosystem. A health effect caused due to the chemical fertilizers application is due to the increased amount of nitrates, and this causes the blue baby syndrome. It affects normally the infants and it is fatal. And here the nitrates in the drinking water, like when these nitrates enter the groundwater and that is used for the drinking purposes, then the nitrate in the drinking water will lead to methemoglobinemia, also known as a blue baby syndrome. It can come from the fertilizers applied to the soil. The nitrates form the compounds in the body that can change the hemoglobin to methemoglobin, and that means this methemoglobin has decreased capacity to carry the oxygen in the blood to the different cells and organs. So, in infants it can be fatal. So, here you can see the color also of the hemoglobin and the methemoglobin and the metabolic effect caused. So, do chemical fertilizers have any link to the health effects? Yes, arsenic. So, there are strong links between heavy metals and chemical fertilizers. Water is a connecting medium. We have the phosphate containing fertilizers which are an inorganic source of arsenic, and we have chemical fertilizers that contain elevated levels of arsenic, cadmium, lead and dioxins. They can affect the nervous system, liver, heart and the skin. and also in certain districts of Bathinda and Thalwandi districts. So here also they say that there can be the granite underlying rock, or also the excessive application of these fertilizers containing uranium that can also cause the cerebral palsy and the same forms of congenital effects in the human beings and in the infants. So there again there are certain problems. Now speaking of arsenic contamination in West Bengal, this is of very serious concern, and there is severe contamination of the groundwater, primarily due to the geologic reasons, because the entire belt that is running from the West Bengal, Assam and Bangladesh, this entire belt is facing the problem of arsenic contamination, and it is aggravated by the indiscriminate use of fertilizers containing arsenic. So the arsenic, when ingested for more than 10 to 15 years, this gives rise to certain spots which is called as the melanosis. Then that will that manifests into keratosis or the hardened skin, and after that it will lead to leprosy like skin lesions. So arsenic is toxic, and it can cause various types of skin disorders and skin lesions. In this figure you can see the first form which develops after 10 to 15 years, that is the melanosis. In this form you can see the arsenic tainted waters that are leading to the lesions and the skin ulcers. So are there any green biotechnological solutions for environmental management in protecting us from the use of the chemical fertilizers in the plants, in the food products that we eat? Yes. So biofertilizers can be used. For example, rhizobium is used in crops such as peas, beans and alfalfa. Azotobacter is used in wheat, maize and in cotton. Azospirillum is used in sorghum, millets and maize. Nostoc and Anabaena, blue-green algae, they are used for protecting the paddy crops. Vermicompost is also used. This is produced by using the earthworms. And biocompost is also an organic fertilizer that helps to increase the soil fertility for good farm produce. Summarizing this session's lecture, in this lecture we have understood the importance of green biotechnology in environmental management in the different sectors where we can use it, and we have given a special emphasis to sustainable agricultural practices. We have seen how the people we are actually facing the health effects due to the application of the chemical fertilizers, the chemical pesticides, and how there are green alternatives and how biotechnology could play a major role in tackling environmental issues and for sustainable agricultural practices. Thank you.